Naysayers stand by wheezing and huffing and puffing about how this'll never work, or it's too late to save this species or habitat, or be practical. We have to compromise with the developers. It is the truly passionate conservationists who never give up. They are empowered by the hard work. You can see it in their eyes. Maybe I'm also optimistic because in many countries, I find a growing sense of pride in their flagship species and their natural heritage. Just as importantly, there is a sense that they have a reason to protect what is still there. Not only because it's good for tourism or foreign exchange, but also because it's important to them and their children. So today, when we live in an age of terrible loss all around us, rather than sadness for what we've done, it's essential that we express hope for what can be done. In order to do that, we need guiding lights, role models, who can light the way. For there are thousands of success stories of wild animals and plants that are making a comeback, and of people who are helping to protect the natural world we depend upon. They are, as Martin Luther King described himself in his self-scribed eulogy, drum majors for wildlife conservation. And speaking of role models, it's worth noting that while we were pulling together this collection of conservation success stories, almost every conservationist we talked with harked back to the key role Jane's early work had in shaping their careers. Some mention the 1960s cover stories in National Geographic magazine. Others reference the early TV specials about her life among the wild chimpanzees. And almost everyone spoke of the direct impact of Jane's seminal research chronicled in her 1971 book, In the Shadow of Man. The significance of her first book to these modern-day conservationists encompassed much more than just Jane's scientific accomplishments. As Dr. David Hamburg of the Stanford University School of Medicine wrote in the original foreword to In the Shadow of Man, once in a generation there occurs a piece of research that changes man's view of himself. The listener of this audiobook has the privilege of sharing such an experience. At the time, of course, he was marveling at Jane's remarkable discoveries in chimpanzee behavior. However, her long-term study of wildlife, the first of its kind, also changed the way men and women viewed the possibilities of their own lives and careers. For there is not a field biologist, as the new parlance goes, who does not owe a debt to the inspiration of Jane Goodall. And now, nearly half a century in, Jane's ongoing work has motivated two generations of researchers and conservationists, including the people in this audiobook working tirelessly to save wildlife. This group covers a wide spectrum. Some were educated at the best universities in the world. Others are largely self-taught through a lifetime of working with animals. Most are broke, since nobody goes into protecting wildlife for the money or vacation time. Group members span from their 20s to their 70s in age. Some of them are politically savvy, and others are obstinate. But they share two things in common. They refuse to give up or take no for an answer, and they recognize that Jane Goodall authentically understands the relationship that is essential between wildlife and humans. These are their stories.
Introduction. I'm reading this audio book from my home in Bournemouth, England. I grew up in this house, and as I look out of my window, I can see the very same trees I climbed as a child. Up high in those trees, I believed I was closer to the birds in the sky, more a part of nature. Even as a very young child, I felt most alive in the natural world, and almost every book I read, borrowed from the local library, was about animals and adventures in wild, untamed places in the world. I began with the stories about Dr. Dolittle, that English doctor who was taught animal languages by his parrot. Then I discovered the books about Tarzan of the Apes. Those two books inspired a seemingly impossible dream. I would go to Africa one day and live with animals and write books about them. Perhaps the volume that influenced me most was called The Miracle of Life. I spent hours poring over the small print of those magical pages. It was not a book written for children, but I was absolutely absorbed as I learned about the diversity of life on Earth, the age of the dinosaurs, evolution and Charles Darwin, the early explorers and naturalists, and the amazing variety and adaptations of the animals around the world. And so, as I grew older and learned more and more, my love of animals broadened from my hamster, slowworm, guinea pigs, cats, and dog, to a fascination for all the amazing animals I read about in those books. For there was no television.